So now, here's the whole world ocean, and the color scheme is not quantified on here, but I can tell you basically what's going on. All the deep blue is abyssal plain, about 5 kilometers deep, and you see it a lot of places. These little lines that run up through the middle of oceans, for example, in the South Pacific and in the all the way up through the Atlantic, the South and the North Atlantic, those are spreading centers, mid-ocean ridges. And then the trenches don't show up well on this diagram, but they are the darker blues still. And you see a little thin line along there that's a trench. You see one here. You see an important one here and up along here, and even along the tip of the Aleutian Islands. So those are the subduction zones.
The ocean floor is actually being pushed down, and as it goes down, it leaves a deep, deep canyon in the ocean floor. We call it a deep sea trench. A deep sea trench is actually the deepest part of the ocean anywhere. In fact, the deepest hole on Earth is the Marianas Trench, and the Marianas Trench is over 36,000 feet deep, and it's the deepest.
Consider the surface of the world under the sea. We shall find the same uniformity of evidence against the popular view.
To 1872, when a British research vessel, HMS Challenger, set out on the first ever mission to map the ocean floor.
Throughout most of recorded history, men had just assumed that beyond a certain level the sea was pretty flat, pretty dead, fairly lifeless. They weren't expecting to find anything very interesting.
For 4 years, the Challenger crisscrossed the oceans, covering 70,000 miles. The crew plumbed the depths every 140 miles, using a total of 249 miles of rope and hundreds of pounds of lead weight. It was tedious, backbreaking work, but at the time it was the only way to measure the depth of the ocean floor. The Challenger expedition marked the birth of modern oceanography and provided the first crude map of the ocean floor. It showed how the ocean floor gently slopes away from the land and then plummets thousands of feet into vast flat plains.
In Nature and Man by Professor W.B. Carpenter, article The Deep Sea and Its Contents, pages 320 and 321, the writer says, "Nothing seems to have struck the Challenger surveyors more than the extraordinary flatness, except in the neighborhood of land, of that depressed portion of the earth's crust which forms the floor of the great oceanic area." Quote, "Nothing seems to have struck the Challenger surveyors more than the extraordinary flatness of the earth's crust which forms the floor of the great oceanic area. If the bottom of mid-ocean were laid dry, an observer standing on any spot of it would find himself surrounded by a plain only comparable to that of the North American prairies or the South American pampas. The form of the depressed area which lodges the water of the deep ocean is rather, indeed, to be likened to that of a flat waiter or tea tray, surrounded by an elevated and deeply sloping rim, than to that of the basin with which it is commonly compared." This remarkable writer tells of thousands of miles in the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the great southern ocean beds being a plain surface, and from his remarks it is clear that a flat surface is the general contour of the bed of the great oceans for tens of thousands of square miles. Canals. If the earth be the globe of popular belief, it is very evident that in cutting a canal, an allowance must be made for the curvature of the globe, which allowance would correspond to the square of the distance multiplied by 8 inches, nearly. From The Age of 5 August 1893, I extract the following. Quote, the German emperor performed the ceremony of opening the gates of the Baltic and North Sea Canal in the spring of 1891. The canal starts at Holtenau on the south side of Kiel Bay and joins the Elbe 15 miles above its mouth. It is 61 miles long, 200 feet wide at the surface, and 85 feet at bottom. No locks are required, as the surface of the two seas is level. Let those who believe it is the practice for surveyors to make allowance for curvature ponder over the following from the Manchester Ship Canal Company, Earth Review, October 1893. It is customary in railway and canal constructions for all levels to be referred to a datum which is nominally horizontal, and is so shown on all sections. It is not the practice in laying out public works to make allowance for the curvature of the earth. The Manchester Ship Canal Company, Engineers Office, 19th February 1892. The form of the depressed area which lodges the water of the deep ocean is rather, indeed, to be likened to that of a flat waiter or tea tray, surrounded by an elevated and deeply sloping rim, than to that of the basin with which it is commonly compared. This remarkable writer tells of thousands of miles in the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the great southern ocean beds being a plain surface, and from his remarks it is clear that a flat surface is the general contour of the bed of the great oceans for tens of thousands of square miles.